Well, good morning. Welcome back. You have been out, so I'm glad you're here. And yeah, we're going to jump into another how many hundred years? I'm not sure. I didn't actually calculate it, I don't think. I think I'm a little hot. You might want to turn me down a little bit, would you please? So one of the things that we have seen and pointed out a number of times is the idea that even though there's a lot of fallibility, a lot of failures in people's lives, and this section is entitled God Never Stops Working. And one of the nice things I find about transitioning to this point in the whole history is we do start seeing more, if you will, of people who are pretty astounding in terms of their impact and what they have accomplished and what they've done. And yeah, some amazingly godly people that have really done a great deal of good that is still, some of them continuing on, as we've talked about others occasionally, that is lasting. And so yeah, want to keep helping you to capture the idea of how amazing it is that God has continued to work in people's lives in spite of who they are and what they have done in terms of failure, but also that it just shows His faithfulness. And so, yeah, I want to encourage you to do that, but to help you be encouraged in doing that, I want to keep holding you to be accountable to your reading. So put your books aside, put other stuff aside, create a little hole there. Same kind of thing, name on the top of the page. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I forget you?
Are we doing the one with the prompt side or the one that's
Blank side. Yeah, I'm just recycling paper because I'm frugal. So, yeah, take the blank side, put your name on the top. Number 1 to 5. Here you go. Let me know when you're ready to go. Everybody done? You know the drill. Let's trade papers with somebody. Let them grade it for you, and let's talk through it. Yeah, well, or there, or here, either one. Guys want to trade here? She doesn't have any table mates. She kicked them out. Okay, so there were 2 rulers, at least, who asked for missionaries. Who were they? Anybody remember? Go.
It was the one from the Mongolian Empire?
Yep. Khan. Yeah, so Khan asked for a missionary, and who else? Do you remember the other one? King of Moravia, page 82, if you want to highlight it. King of Moravia asked. And the Moravian whole work ended up being a bigger section there. Okay, number 2. Name one of the groups of monks. What was it? All right, name one.
The poor folk under Friar Francis?
Yeah, so it said they became known as the Franciscans. And we're going to watch a video about them later, and they're still around, and a lot like Benedict, a number of these have stayed, going on more than a millennium, and continued. Name another one. Somebody else. What's one? You can look in your book now. You can look for answers. Where are they at?
I was just curious if the Four Clares also counted.
What's that?
Four Clares. It was the female division.
Yeah, I would count that. I didn't write that down as one of the things, but you're right. They ended up being a pretty substantial thing.
Yeah, that was just amazing. There was the Clooney group as well.
Right, the group at Cluny. They became known as something else. Do you know what they were? Do you remember?
Yeah, very rich.
They did, which talked about the corruption, and we're going to see that who worked to get us out of that. The Cistercians, remember them? and the Waldensians. So Waldo, I thought you guys would remember that one easy. So where's Waldo? Yeah, right. What's that? That was the Franciscans, wasn't it? The Clooney group, because remember St. Francis went there. There was like, it was dying, and then he went there with a number of people. I think, was it 21? Am I remembering that right? And went in, and they decided to get really involved and go. I think that one was on, a lot of it was around page 78. I didn't write each individual one. And then the Dominicans. So there were 4 of them in there. The point is that we're going to be looking a bit at what's going on in the development of these monks and how they really put something together that continued on for centuries. And obviously, if somebody facilitates and accomplishes that, that's a pretty big deal. And what they accomplished was, and continues to be good. Okay, Bernard of Clairvaux was a great quote there. Bernard of Clairvaux. What was the appropriate thing of seeking knowledge? And my hope in really highlighting that is not just for you to know it, but to live it. What did he say? What's the point? Somebody remember?
I kind of wrote a different, basically he said you want to seek knowledge because you trust, not seek knowledge in order to trust. I will say I did misread that question.
Turn to page 84. We're going to hit this, and we're going to hit it again, because remember, we've talked about this a number of different ways and times. What is the difference, we talked about this a little bit, between teaching and preaching?
Preaching is a change of heart, or is the aim, that's the aim.
Right, and teaching is? What is the goal of teaching? Right, I think that's a good way to say it. Another way, in terms of a real, the biblical perspective is that what we're really after in spiritual formation is transformation, sanctification. That we're continually made into the image of God, into the image of Jesus. We're learning to be people who follow after Jesus with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We're putting everything into that. So page 84, what do we learn about that? Isn't that where I said? No, sorry, page... It is page 84. Yeah, it was, page 84. What was the point? Somebody find the quote? Go for it.
Some seek knowledge for the sake of knowledge. This is curiosity. Some seek knowledge to be known by others. This is vanity. Some seek knowledge to serve. This is love.
So the answers, either of which, are to serve or to love. And so love being expressed is to serve, which is what Jesus did. He didn't just say he loved us. He came in sacrifice. He served. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Number 5, did I skip 4? Sorry, number 4. True or false? Mobile clergy became beneficial because people were fleeing war. Why? Right, and actually what was happening? It was in the vacuum of war. We now had peace, and people could go and be mobile sellers. What was the term? There was a different term in that. But basically, they were mendicants, but it was a traveling merchant. And so because they were traveling merchants, there were people who were coming village to village and place to place. So, hey, that's where the people are at. That's where they're meeting. That's where they're interacting. Guess what? Let's take the gospel there. And so the preachers began doing that as well. So it was false. Page 84, if you want it. I'm sorry, page 85. All right, so who tied his tunic with a rope? Practice still utilized by the monks named after him. Francis of Assisi, page 87 and 88. All right, talk to me a little bit about the quiz, because I feel like I really tried to write them just to say, hey, I just want you to keep doing your reading, but do you feel like you've read it and yet you're still not doing well on that? I'm happy to hear that. You're trying, but it's not working? What? Talk to me. Or are you just, if you're just not reading, then I'm not helping you. I get it.
Too focused on the final.
What's that?
Too focused on the final.
Ah, collect them up, pass them in, please. Thank you. You read it hardcore, did you say?
Yeah, I sat down and read it like intentionally, and it did worse than you did.
And you still didn't get it? Yeah, I'm up for suggestions for quizzing to try and keep you accountable.
I've read it twice. I read the thing twice and I still can't get the answer.
I don't know how to get a quiz. I'm not very good at writing quizzes, which is why I don't put many points on it or a final.
Forgot this one.
Thank you.
Why did you give me, no. He put a half a point on the first question, but I was correct on the first question. So literally. He said the answer was con, which I did right. Wait, are you like sharing answers again? No.
I'm grading.
He's grading mine.
Fix it and then give me the whole stack, please. Yeah. Guys, I want you to stay with me. And listen, I feel like the attention span and the paying attention is being distracted by goofing around and phones and other devices. If you're not on a device for this class, put it away. If you're doing something for the class, you can use it. If you're not doing something for the class, put your device away. And let's stay together. Let's be respectful of one another and of what we're working to do. And yeah, help me. Let's make this valuable for each other. We're going to be doing a bit of table interactions and stuff today. And yeah, even if you don't really want to do that, I think your table mates deserve you engaging well. And so I want you to do that. I want you to enter in and work with me. Let's try and make this effective and helpful. All right, what were you going to say?
So I think if you keep the same questions, but then add like a couple of names, some right or wrong ones, like throw in some rulers.
More multiple choice?
I would say multiple choice, and then to make it fair, so we have to read things, put familiar names, and just mix them up. So like put some monks, mix and match monks into, let's say like the ruler area with the missionaries, and then the same thing with the monks, and then, you know, something like that. Because I mean, I know for me, memorizing names doesn't work, but if I start seeing one, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy, oh that's what he did, you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, appreciate the feedback. And I really did. I wanted to try and get you to be able to catch up with things, but yeah, have takeaways. I wasn't trying to stump you. But, you know, interesting thing about being 38 years as a pastor, I've yet to write a quiz for my congregation. So it's kind of, it's not something you do a lot when you're pastoring, and so learning to do that, I get it. I'm not dramatically experienced. Yes, Miss Kim.
My suggestion is an open book.
Open book and make a timer,
Yeah,
because otherwise we'd sit here forever.
right, but I mean, I've read it and I know what it says, and I you know, that's what you do in the Bible, that you don't remember, so you look it up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Want to do it again?
I'll do it again.
Yes, I will do it.
After you give it us the answers, I'll do it again.
All right, we're going to move. Yeah, I'll work on seeing about, I don't know if we can grade on a curve or something. I'll figure that out because I know some of that's just my bad. I don't know how to do that very well. All right, so this chapter introduced sayings, these Christians seem to have lived with their eyes on Augustine's city of God. How did you see that is true? Talk to me. What are you seeing? Did you see some transition going on? So I want participation, all right? I want you to engage. And it isn't just the same people over and over again. So please, step up. You can open your book if you want. You can step into this. But these Christians seem, it was introduced, to have lived with their eyes on Augustine's city of God. How did you see this as true? What were your takeaways?
I didn't really have like a takeaway or that part, but I guess questions about crops led to curiosity about the Christian faith?
About crops?
Yeah, like
Where are
farm.
you at? Somebody else look it, or all of you, look it up. Where, what page?
The first page, not like the beginning part, but like down here.
I do remember that part, because there were Christian farmers in an area, and their crops were doing so well that the native people group there thought, oh, well, what are you doing right? And then between those conversations that were building a level of trust and rapport, they were able to then segue into Christianity, and there was a lot of successful conversions through that.
Second question, how did you figure that out? Does it say that in the book?
It does. I just remember reading it yesterday.
Go ahead.
Also, during one of the missionaries that we had at our church at Faith Bible, they actually did that. They had a ranch, that's how they got into the community, and then they started to minister to the community through that ranch. And that, was that,
Yeah, that,
yes.
yeah, they did really good too.
So it was like not in class necessarily, but we had context outside of class.
So in our denomination, we have a relief arm of our church, and one of the things that has been their tagline at points is turning relief into belief. I like that. So they're out caring for starving people. They're getting water projects done where unsafe water is common and kills lots of babies in particular and young children. And putting in a safe well is a big deal to them. And it gives amazing opportunity. Another way we've articulated that that I think is helpful and driving into those ideas is that we go to the poorest many times of the people of the world, not all poor in financial stuff, but sometimes it is. And we work at building bridges from our spot in the world and our understanding of who Jesus is and stuff, and build a bridge out into the community that will carry the weight of the gospel. I like that imagery. That we're building a relationship, we're building an intent, we're building a service mindset that causes people to say, why are you doing this? Why are you here, living in a foreign culture, having to learn a foreign language and all the difficulties of that? And it is because we want to be able to share the gospel. So we're going to do a lot more interacting. Again, I want you to grab hold and jump in with that. So you'll learn today, here's where we're going, monks as missionaries, mystics, monks, and nuns that we're going to talk about, mendicants, as we mentioned already a little bit, in the Middle Ages. A little bit more on the later Crusades then, and then how the scholastics glorified God, which really gets us starting the transition point, and we're going to be talking about that as we get to that point, which your reading covered. So we're covering a lot of ground. We're going to go back a little bit from where we got up to yesterday. If you remember, we got into what year? I think almost 1100, was it? Or almost. And so we're circling back a little bit because, again, not everything can be described just linearly because there's multiple streams of things that take place and that go on. So that's where we're going. And yeah, what we're looking at. So monks as missionaries first. Medieval monks and nuns often established new communities in pagan areas. They farmed, built relationships with non-believers, resulting in pagans often inquiring about the true God, which is the question that you just asked. And interestingly enough, this monastery, Bean Tree, it's B-E-E-N Tree, ruined monastery is in Zagorz, Poland. And it's still there today if you wanted to go and look at it. But the monasteries that they built, some of them were pretty stout and you can still go and tour a bunch of them. Yeah. Thank you. I forgot. I have them. Who wants worksheets? Did you guys want some? Not everybody wanted these, but if you want them. Tell me about Boniface. What do you know? I get everybody that wanted one?
Was he the one who had on the tree every point? This is not in our book.
What was that?
This is not in our book.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
I feel like it was in the book.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet it
he
was.
cut down the tree and like the first axe blow, it fell the whole tree because of the blue.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why, I think maybe some of the points I was going to make were not in the book, but yeah, was he in there? Go ahead and look. Okay. Well, let me do this first, and you guys follow along in your book if you want. What page are you on?
Page 80, and it's under the section, Did You Know? It's
Okay.
in the red font.
So let me read this. Maybe I went and grabbed some more stuff, and that's what I meant by that. Facing death, he told his fellow monks, "Sons, cease fighting. Lay down your arms. For we are told in Scripture not to render evil for good, but to overcome evil by good. The hour to which we have long looked forward to is near, and the day of our release is at hand. Take comfort in the Lord, and endure with gladness the suffering that he has mercifully ordained. Put your faith in him, and he will grant deliverance to your souls."
So it talks more about his interaction with the Germanic people and Crete, and what that did to their faith.
Yeah, and he was that. So he was known as the apostle to Germany. St. Boniface stood against pagan practices, defied Thor. So you were right, cutting down the tree. Sorry that I confused us about it not being in the book when some of it is. His acts of courage changed history, spread the gospel, and yeah, left an amazing, lasting legacy. So I wanted to go back to that quote I read. So he is saying, lay down your weapons and, get ready to die, basically. Think about that in relation to all the stuff that we talked about and how prevalent were the Crusades and the power struggles and all of the warring kind of stuff that went on. This guy steps into that void, and look at what he boldly says. First of all, he wasn't a coward. If you go and chop down Thor's tree, Thor the hammer, right? Or Thor's hammer. He was very bold, but yet he was also willing to lay down his life. And I'm just, encouraged to think that in the stream of the church going more and more this way, seeking power and getting after power, here's this person who decides, even though the culture is all going to go this way, and as Mark just led us in our devotional this morning, as the culture says, hey, sex is just for your entertainment and enjoyment. You don't have to really have any regulation to that. We are called as Christians to say, no, that's not who we are. And that is not the standard that God has given us. And that whole stream is flowing with a great deal of pressure against us. And we're going to say, no, we're going this way because our King is worthy of honor and glory. And we're going to go against the flow of the culture around us. And I think that, finding those people, looking at that, whether it's whoever you're studying, whatever kind of thing you're studying, and looking and saying, Lord, would I be a person like that? And that again talks about then how your paper becomes an impact paper. It's not always easy to discern that, and that is a part of the instruction, is to try and say, how do I allow what I learn to be spiritually forming me in all sorts of ways?
So I just had a comment on Boniface. I like seeing how God, or I would say it was God honoring his type of boldness, because in the book it says that it wasn't his chopping that knocked down the tree. He only got one hit in, but then wind knocked it down the rest of the way.
I didn't catch that. I didn't remember it.
Yeah,
Oh, that's neat. I believe you.
Boniface began to chop down the German god's sacred tree, but with the axe's first blow, the wind gust felled the oak.
Yeah.
We got one hit in and then wind.
Kind of like taking the rod and tapping it in the water, and the water goes back, isn't it?
Well, and you just
Mr. Moses.
how strong was that gust? This is a tree we're talking about.
Yeah, it must have been ancient. So by the late 800s, even though many of the monasteries were started with really good intent, they, like lots of streams of Christianity and development, they begin getting corrupted and not doing so well. They're going in a wrong direction. By the 800s, many monasteries were in need of reform, and some monasteries were controlled by corrupt nobles. Others had been sacked by the Vikings, and so Duke William III of Aquitaine, this was in your book, France, he wanted to establish a monastery that would not be controlled by the nobles, lords, and kings. So what did he do? Do you remember the story? Okay, no? Somebody? Go.
He sold his dogs.
Yeah, what was the big deal about that? Anybody remember? What?
So it was a status symbol back then, and since he released all of his hunting dogs, that was kind of a blow to his reputation.
Well, I mean, dogs were, hunting hounds were very, very expensive then too.
And only the wealthiest people had them.
Yeah. We were in the United Kingdom 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, 3 years ago, and we got to go to this really cool. It's kind of verge of a castle, but certainly a very huge lord's house, and it had a whole separate building that was very nice. That was just the hunting mount thing. It was amazing, the mounts that were all over this place. But one of the things that they had is a demonstration out on the garden, and we have the pictures of it. It's just amazing, huge, like picture these huge English gardens with all the hedges and the different kind of, trees and things in each of the spots. And you're up here on the third story looking down at all of this, and it's just amazingly majestic. But they had, as a part of the tour of the house also, they had the local falconer who was still employed by the original family. So the tour of the house could only be on certain levels of the house because the heirs of those families still lived in the upper levels of that castle. They didn't live there all the time, but they lived there a bit. And so they kept groundskeepers and stuff because it is partly a museum, but they still had the falconer there. And a falconer is an amazing amount of work. I don't know if you've ever read about it and stuff, but he brought out these two different, a hawk and a falcon, and he flew them for us. And it's just astounding. But he would tell us about why the falcon was a big deal. And it's very similar, actually, to this guy having the dogs. That back in the day, the lord of the manor, to be able to feed all of his people, all of his serfs that were under, getting food was not an easy thing. And to have to farm all of it on this rather rough land all the way up there in north of Scotland isn't super highly productive. And so hunting was a big deal, and they hunted with falcons. And so the falcon was trained to be able to kill the meat, and hey, we get to have meat for supper tonight. And it was because he had the falcons to be able to do that. Similarly, then, it was, yes, a sign of a symbol of being able to have wealth, but it was in part also being able to say, I can feed my people. I can care for them, and I can take care of them. So I think there's a similar thing. So what ends up happening is then a monk named Burdick said that the best place for this monastery was Cluny, Duke William's hunting grounds. So yeah, he sells his hunting dogs and deeded his land to the apostles Peter and Paul. I'm not sure. I don't remember. What was the deal with that? Why did they call that? Does anybody recall? Was that in the book?
It was, I don't quite remember.
I don't really.
I think they were named that, but I don't think that they were the Peter, the Paul. Yeah, they were.
What? Say it again, Rochelle.
I don't think it was like the apostles, like from like who were with Jesus during the time. I think they were different people.
Yeah, I didn't remember why that was.
Unless is that a term meaning like selling it to God and the Pope?
Yeah, and we have that expression saying stealing from Peter to pay Paul. I don't know if it's something like that. You have it?
Page 81 says,
Page 81.
William freed his dogs and deeded his property to Peter Paul and the leading monk, not to be confused with Peter, Paul, and Mary, which were a much later group that had nothing to do with monks.
Yeah, so whoever that person was, we don't
Apparently,
really know.
group under that name, but he just clarified it was a completely different group.
Right. So the Abbey was once the largest church in the world. So it got to be quite the deal. And remnants of it are still there today. The Cluny Abbey is located in the town of Cluny in eastern France, and I believe that's the picture of what remains yet today. That's a modern picture, not an old one. And yeah, so it was quite the place that was established there. So a different monk as missionary, John of Damascus, was an important theologian and monk in the Eastern Empire. he wrote 3 treatises about the icon controversy. Do you remember what his position was in writing those? So he entered into the icon controversy a bit, wrote some treatises that ended up being formative. What was his position? See if you can find it. You can use your book.
I know he didn't have a problem with it.
Pardon me?
I know he didn't have a problem with the icon.
So what was it? So go after that more. What was his position then? What?
We watched the video, the like icon user.
Mm-hmm. So, but his treatise, why was he addressing him? What did he say in them? Anybody?
I think he was defining the difference between reverence of the icons and worshiping of them, because that was a big deal. People thought they were worshiping the icons, which, some were, but he was defining that more, to my understanding.
You're right, both of you. The idea is that he was trying to say, how can we utilize the icons and not worship icons, but yet allow them to be teaching instruments that help us to be able to address this? So John inherited a powerful political position in the Muslim-controlled nation of Syria. And yeah, he wrote these 3 treatises on the veneration due to images. And yeah, his position, as we talked about, was that he was trying to utilize them as teaching tools, but not cause them to be worshiped. And John of Damascus then promoted this icon reverence while rejecting icon worship. The iconoclast Eastern emperor falsely claimed that John was plotting against Muslims. Because why? Remember that? It was both in the reading and the position. Let somebody else participate. What was going on? What happened? Why did the icon controversy get built up even more around 610 and on? Do you want to try? Go for it.
Wasn't it because of one of the emperors forged like a document?
I think that was related, but there was some other influence that was outside of the church, remember, that pushed it. Do you have it? Nathan, you raise your hand. You got it? You lost it? Okay. What were the Islamic people teaching? Do you remember that? It was both in the reading and the discussion and in the video. They were saying icons are evil and you Christians are idol worshipers. And so they pushed that a lot.
I don't remember if it said this in the book, but I do remember it from history a long time ago, but the extent of Islam's dislike for icons and stuff at that time was so extensive that they forbid like any visual art. And that's where they have a really nice calligraphy, is that was the type of art they allowed people to have.
Yeah, so it was that
It changed eventually, but I don't remember.
in the interaction between the Muslim advance and push, and they were saying, you guys say you worship one God, and of course, they would say they worship one God, Allah, and they would just say that's a different name for the same God if there really is only one God. And you guys, though, have all kinds of idolatry going on in your worship. And so there was a lot of pressure from that, and that ended up pushing the Christians to step back and say, well, what are we doing? Are we really utilizing this as idols, or is it really a teaching tool? Is it helping us to point us to Jesus? So the Muslim court then got in this and got involved. They cut off John's right hand and exiled him to a monastery. And the point of this is to look again that, remember we talked about persecution under the Romans. It wasn't the only time, and it's not, unfortunately, the last time that we're going to talk about persecution. It's going to continue. Not as prevalent, not as prominent, but it was going on among the Romans. It was going on in each of these eras. It is going on now. And guess what? It is going on today. There are more people persecuted for Christian faith today than at any point in history. So it's not going away. It's not old stuff. It is current. So unfortunately, here this guy who really stood for faith and truth, the last years of John's life were spent selling baskets in the streets where he once lived as a lord. So here he was another one of these people who gave up everything, ended up going and then getting, basically martyred for his faith.
How do you think he knit baskets with one hand?
Slowly. Yeah. Ask him.
Casey, can you knit me a basket, please?
Give me a couple years.
All right. Let's watch this. See if our volume's right.
Now, it wasn't just Western monks that were missionaries. In 862, the overseer of Constantinople sent a man named Cyril as a missionary to the Slavic people in Moravia.
Not having anyone really know what they had done. And they spent years and years working on writing an alphabet to try and get Christianity into the lives of the people there. And then were exiled, and they didn't get to do anything. So tell me about how you think they would feel. Yeah, this is to set it up, and then you're going to have more of a discussion about it in your groups.
I mean, if I had spent my life doing something and failed, that would be pretty sad.
Discouraging.
Devastating.
You don't get the positive reinforcement of oh, I did it, and now I can go. It's just I've tried, been faithful, but it's just not working.
You wonder if you're wasting your life.
You could see that these people have, they're strong men of the faith. I'm sure they're, brought down to an extent, but at the same time, like Nathan said, they've been faithful, done what God asked. It's in His hands.
Yeah, and yet to sail to Rome to get permission and then to be able to try and reach these people that you've gotten a heart for and that you're trying to communicate with, and then you don't even end up surviving to get back there. And then his brother, obviously, continuing that. It's quite the story, and we're, as we are a lot of times, looking at this. It's good for us to really enter into the weight of it in their lives. So, at your tables, how do you address your own thoughts when you share the gospel with a person that you love and they just don't respond? You've interacted with them, you've tried to share with them, and they continue to not, go. How do you deal with that? So, let's take the historical reality of what they face, and we're going to jump back into that in a couple of minutes. But for us to say for a time, let's jump out of the historical context and jump into our personal context and say, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with it when you share the gospel and people don't respond? So we're not going to be sharing it in a larger group, so I'm wanting you to be able to say, really interact. Open up yourself to your group and as far as you're comfortable doing, and to talk about some heart issues related to that. I really am trying to get you to say, let's participate in the weight of some of the things that these people are doing insofar as we can. So, go. Let's go ahead and wrap it up in another minute. Kim pointed out that I should have probably broadened the questions, which I'm up for suggestions about that kind of thing, that I put it and wrote it really about sharing the gospel, but it could be about just other failures too, and how do we deal with that? I don't know about you, but in my life, I have had a lot of very similar things to these guys and what they have done in terms of investing in a ministry, putting in lots of time in a ministry, and then seeing it just kind of really fall apart. and wondering what is going on. Felt like, for example, after watching something, my analogy, watching something be woven together that was amazingly successful, our second church plant, and it was coming together and going amazingly well, and then all of a sudden at a point, completely unrelated to what was going on in the church itself, we were in rented facilities, and suddenly the building sold, and the new owner was going to jack our rent up to twice the amount of rent next month. Like give you literally like 3 weeks to do something. Well, how do you move a church in 3 weeks or pay twice the amount of rent that you've been paying? And that was the start of what it felt like. Satan just grabbed a hold of this thread that had been being woven together and just watched it come unwound and just coming apart. And I made mistakes in the midst of that. And I did kind of like the Romans did. When things were coming apart, I chose to sort of lock things down stronger and be protective, because the church is kind of your baby, you know, when you're the church planter and put the thing together. And I have to look back at that, and I still do. And with sadness, the church ended up, it lasted another, I think, about 10 years. And ended up, though, it's closed. And I tell you, that just yanks at your heart. You're just like, why? And I've had similar other things, both on smaller scales and on larger scales, that just didn't work. And how do we deal with those? So I'm not asking you specifically to share examples that you don't want to share or aren't comfortable, but what is it that we do about our own failures? Because we're seeing lots of failures, but what do we do with those? What did you come up with in your conversations that are takeaways?
Yeah, I just think about my brother and sister. They're kind of, yeah, I'm not one to judge faith or anything, but less like by like, you know, show me your faith. I'll show you my faith by my works. Like through that kind of logic, it's kind of a little less obvious. So like I've made a point for the last few years when I visit my sister in Portland, I'm always talking about whatever I'm learning or whatever, and same with my brother. And there's some response, but it's very limited, and it's more, you know, there's just a lot of worldly philosophies and ideas that's in there.
So I think I hear you saying your takeaway is just kind of keep trying to press in,
My
be
takeaway, and I think it's applicable to pretty much any situation, is pray, read the Bible, and trust God. Because I don't know if it's a failure or not. Who am I to judge my own actions and say, that was a failure? When, you know, there's Romans 8:28, I think it's 8:28, where he's going to work even the evil out for his glory. You know, like, I'm not God. I can't
it's good.
help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say my takeaway is specifically with the second question, because it's about sharing the gospel, and then the person you love doesn't really respond. Well, because you love that person, just to continue loving them through
Yeah.
that, and a lot of the times that has a lot of an impact on them, and praying for them, like, for sure.
Good.
One of the things that I've considered failures is my books. I have 3 books that I've published, and because they're independently published, they're not very widespread, which is fine. But the goal when I wrote them was to reach one person,
Hmm.
and I didn't know who that person was going to be, and I know for a fact that I've reached more than one.
Hmm.
So from the outside, it would look like a failure, and people who would look at me like we look at them, you know, if we didn't know that it continued forward, people would look at my work and say it's a failure. But when we approach that work with the idea that our success is not the vastness of the reach, but the one person at a time.
Hmm.
And
That's
that's
good.
what makes the big difference.
Good.
I think, can I comment again? Just after listening to things, I have thoughts.
Yeah.
I think it's just an interesting thing that you brought up. I mean, money is the idol in America, whatever. Success is also an idol. And I see a success-oriented mindset in a lot of different places. There's a lot of wisdom big picture, crazy, jumping up on stage, whatever, like Luke was saying in the chapel yesterday. It's about who's in front of me, who can I actually
Yeah.
love? Not even like, sure, like preach the gospel, but words are words, you know. First John talks about loving out of actions and deeds, not word and tongue. And I think it's a pretty important element, not just, hey, Jesus, well, what's that gonna mean if
Yeah.
you're saying that and you turn around and ignore the person? Like, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah, that's good. All right, let's move on. We're going to keep talking about mystics, monks, nuns. We're moving into the 1100s now. Some Roman Catholic monks and nuns emphasize direct experiences with God that are mystical and personal. This is some of the first time that we've really seen and watched the idea of what we read a lot, and you would have studied a bit last week, in the Acts of the Apostles to say, wow, there was lots of signs and wonders and things that were going on. People pressing into that. Bernard of Clairvaux and Hildegard of Bingen were influential in this context. And yeah, Hildegard of Bingen, yeah. Did anybody read the part in the book that talked about her music? Anybody go listen to her music? Well, you might have a different taste in music than me. But I tried to turn on some of her music because I was just thinking it would be fun once in a while to do a song from somebody that we're studying, and we're actually going to do one in a few minutes. But I went to listen to hers, and later when I woke up, I decided I wouldn't use that in class. It was, it might have been good, but it was like, man, was it a snoozer. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend her music. I wouldn't put that on your playlist. But if you got sick, you may want to give her a call. She was, really interesting. Allowed her practice of medicinal cures outside the home, left mainly with the clergy. Hildegard, however, was allowed to distribute her recipes. It was unheard of to have a woman being able to do this. Other than midwifery, there wasn't a lot of sort of, if you will, a doctor that was a woman of her day. So talk about somebody pushing through the glass ceiling. She was a gal who really went after that, allowed to distribute her recipes, facilitate healing. She could identify diseases, describe cures. Church leaders, laymen alike, went to her for advice. It was really interesting. So, do you remember next, as we move on, what was happening among the very strict monasteries? What was going on in a bunch of these monasteries now? So we've got a lot of streams of them. We had in our quiz that were at least 4 of them right here in this chapter. So what was starting to happen about this point as we entered into the 12th century? What do you recall? Okay, you might want to follow along in your book to keep up with it. 1098, the monastery at Cluny had become wealthy, less focused on service and obedience. 21 monks from Cluny, we talked about this briefly earlier, founded a new monastery at Cistercium, France, and they went there. And so in 1112, Bernard of Clairvaux joined the Cistercian order, and I think I said 21. I don't remember how many he had go with him. Does anybody see that? Was it?
31.
I'm sorry?
The book said 31.
31. And he went there, which, remember, this thing is falling apart, basically. It's decaying. It is, not doing well, and we're going to see a bit more about that in a few minutes. It's pretty cool. So I want someone to read on the upper part of page 84. This was on the quiz, but I want to highlight it again. Upper left of page 84. Somebody who hasn't participated yet, here's a chance to easily do it and read. There's a little box, I believe it is, on the page 84, upper left.
I can read it.
Go.
Some seek knowledge for the sake of knowledge, that is curiosity. Some seek knowledge to be known by others, that is vanity. Some seek knowledge to serve, that is love.
So here's a guy who is really working at pressing into saying, I don't want to learn just to learn. I really do want to learn to be transformed into an effective worker for the gospel. And so, according to Bernard, the reason for our loving God is God himself. It isn't for what we get. It isn't for what we're about. It is for loving him for himself. Yet every soul that seeks God has already been anticipated by him. He sought you before you began to seek him. It's pretty rich stuff. He was an influential preacher, rhetorical writer, an original theologian. He had extensive correspondence with leading players, his meditative depths and his mystical and charismatic spirit, his rhetorical skill as a communicator, even his apparent inconsistencies still mark him as an inexhaustible person. He was an amazing guy. And for him, the church, I want you to follow along with this quote here. For him, the church is not merely an institution nor a corporation, but the intimate love relationship between the bride and Jesus Christ as her bridegroom. Now, you cannot institutionalize love. It is personal, intimate, relational, and so deeply desirous. Thus, Bernard's famous sermons on the Song of Songs, 86 sermons on the Song of Songs, are all about the dynamics of the love between the Christian and her Lord. And he said, I have only one desire, to show the hidden delights of the love between Christ and the church. What a rich guy. And by the way, did you notice where the quote comes from? So the quote starts back here on the second bullet, goes all the way down here, and it's from the C.S. Lewis Institute. So as C.S. Lewis's Institute works at teaching spiritual formation to people, they're going back and picking up this monk and saying, here's a person to form your life after. Here's a person to know what it looks like to be formed in the image of Christ and to be putting on his character and nature.
I really enjoyed the last little bit of that part of like St. Bernard's part where it was how he wanted to help people learn about the love of God, that God is love and that aspect of things, but also that that he wanted, I don't know if he created it, but where it says there's things of the infant Jesus to show like his like humility part of things and that some of the love aspect of things. I really like that.
That's cool. Is somebody doing Bernard? I can't remember. I've looked at the list of who's doing what in their studies, but I don't think anyone picked him. So again, we've talked a number of times about how long things have lasted, and us driving along and all seeing this monastery and thinking about, we added up the number of years. What was it? Does anybody remember? 1,700 years, and that's still going? No, I'm getting that muddled. Which one is that? Benedict? Yeah, it was a Benedictine monastery. But Bernard of Clairvaux, again, lots of rich things in his life. And so I want to put some time into these sorts of saints today because I know, we've dealt with the Crusades, we dealt with the whole idea of the corruption in the church with the popes and the corruption with the other leaders and lots of stuff that's not very good, not really something that we want to model. And yet they were dealing with a lot of things. But I also want to be able to say, man, there's some people who, if you wanted to go back and do a study again, you would find your soul enriched. And this one, and you might want to, you can stay seated if you want, you might want to stand, but Bernard of Clairvaux wrote a song. I think you probably know it, and we're going to sing it. Or you can just listen to it. Oh, sacred head thou wounded.
Or A or O?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sacred head. Excuse me. So, if you want to go back, look at those lyrics and read them just meditatively, you'll find that, not everybody in the ancient world and an ancient church was messed up. Like, there's some real depth to some of the people and what they developed, and certainly Bernard was one of those. So, yeah, questions about this morning? We're going to take our break, but want to kind of do a finish up, tie up, whatever, if that is helpful about what we've covered thus far before we move on the next section of the chapter. So any pushback, questions, interactions, stuff you want to wrestle with?
It said, well, one, it says, only Bernard surpassed her prestige, which, one, I don't know what prestige means. But also, it said she had mystic visions.
So prestige, who knows what it is?
Isn't it like clout, or like, not clout as much as it is like, value, like, prestige would be like, I don't know, it could be in different contexts, but I think it's just like high value.
Mm-hmm.
Value.
Good.
I would describe it as like the honor that is attached to someone's name.
Yeah. To a prestigious, like if you're a professor at Harvard, you have a pretty prestigious position. Okay, but your question was not only the definition, but then?
But then she also had visions, which, what kind of visions?
Yeah, I didn't dive into that to find out what, but there are lots of people, both of days gone by, but what do you know about folks who are ministering among Muslims today? Do you know some folks who are ministering in Muslim communities, areas? What's going on there?
I do, but what I think you're referring to, because I haven't necessarily heard this from the people that I am close to who have ministered to Muslims, or mostly close to. What I hear is that Muslims have been visions of Christ, and these are people who have never heard about Christ in their lives, but they are getting also passages of the Bible, like I am the way, the truth, the life, and it is leading them to Christ en masse.
Because it says Renaissance. I don't know if this is the time where they would have thought like women were witches if they had things like that. So, do you think if she had visions and said this, would she have been like, that whole thing?
Yeah, that's later. And so I think your question is, for a later era, not in the scope of the period of time that we're looking at. But yeah, lots of people still today, Jesus is revealing himself in visions. And we have a number of friends who are working among Muslims. And for instance, entering into Ramadan, one of the things that they ask us to pray for every year is that as they are entering into the fast of Ramadan, to be praying that they would see visions of Jesus. And there's I don't know how many, but hundreds and hundreds of people coming to faith in Christ in the Muslim world today because of Jesus revealing himself to them in visions. But also the idea that as you studied the book of Acts last week, think about all of the things that were going on there. And that didn't just end because the apostolic age ended. Have you thought about what it was like that they grabbed hold of pieces of cloth that Paul had touched and took it to go and heal people? Like, that's pretty mystical. That's pretty out there. That pushes us a bit. And yet, we will tend to not really step in, as I know I don't anyway, step into praying in faith, just praying that people would be healed, that God would touch them, that they would see visions, that he would reveal himself to them. So yeah, the book didn't go into a lot of the emphasis of the mystical, but there was quite a bit there that was a resurgence and going on. And we see that in other periods of history as well. Anybody else? Anything else? All right, let's take a break. Be back 10 till, please. Or about. All right, let's bring it in. We are going to do a little table work for a few minutes again. So here's what I want you to do. Page 78, grab your book. Open it up. And there are, under the heading there, 4 terms that you should know. We have the 4 different monastic orders. So I can't remember the order they're in, so we're going to start over here. You got it? Everybody got it? What's the first one?
What page you say?
78. You found them? What's the first one? Nestorianism. Okay, so you guys are doing Nestorianism. Second one is?
Yeah, you said terms usually.
What's that?
Wait, terms or events? Oh, yeah.
I think it's just on, that's the heading, isn't it?
Wait, there's like 3 lists. You're talking about
Yeah, the monastic orders.
Oops, I said the wrong one.
4 terms you should know on the left.
So the first one should have been,
Cistercians. So on the bottom of the page, we had the wrong thing, the Cistercians. Okay? Second one is? You're the Waldensians. You guys are the? Franciscans. Yeah, the Franciscan monks. You're the Dominicans. And we start again, and you guys are the? Number 1? Cistercians. And you guys are number 2? Or do you want to just jump in on our table? Because what would you guys like to do? Since you haven't been able to be a part of that, would you like to jump in and make a bigger group? Okay, why don't you just slide over there? And here's what I want you to do. Look at them. What were a couple things that they did well? So you're going to have to go back, review in your book. You are welcome to use some of the other books if you want for a few minutes. So I want you to do a little bit of study on it. You can use your phones now. You can use your devices. Look it up if you want. If you want to do a Google search of it and find a couple of quick things. We're not going to take a ton of time, but I do want you to take some time. What are 2 things that order did well? What would they encourage us to do today? Now listen, what I really want you to do is to say, one of the things that's helpful about studying ancient peoples, and when I say ancient, I'm not talking BC, as you know, I'm talking about the era that we're in now. They had a very different world to deal with. But that doesn't mean, and in some ways it means very much, that they can speak to things in our culture and our world that are really insightful and helpful. So just as an example, would simplicity of many of the monastic orders be of help to people in our modern era? And you'd say, we could really tend to model and pick up and grab hold of the concept of simplicity and make a big impact in our spiritual formation, in our putting on the nature and the image of Christ. And so, nature and character of Christ. And so I want you to look at that kind of thing. What did they do? What was their strength? And how would that impact us today? And then explain what we might do about that. And we're going to do just a brief report from your groups. But work in your groups. Dig into those, try and make those applications, and then we're going to pull back. I'll give you 15 minutes, and then let's be prepared to be able to give a report back to everybody about it. Go! Let's bring it in and finish your last thoughts. You got something that you're ready to share? I want you to try and just hit a quick point. We'll come back around another time. So don't do your whole sharing. Let's go through. What's the first question? What 2 things did that order do well? Tell us who you were, and one of you report that, and tell us what the 2 things were. What was the group, and what were the 2 things that did well? One of you do it. We're going to start over here. Listen up.
We had the Cistercian monks, also known as the white monks, and things they did well was like living very simplistic lives in like silence and solitude.
Why were they called the white monks? Do you remember?
Because they didn't dye their clothes.
And what was the point of that? It was. Yeah, they were going to not mess with having to dye their clothes. Like that was a step into that idea of simplicity. You guys, what'd you do? What were your 2 things? Waldensians.
There you go, sure. Where's Waldo people is what I'm saying.
That works.
The two things they did well is basically they would equip people and send them out like the apostles would, 2 by 2, which I like that. I thought that was pretty cool. And then they also kind of were a bit of a reformation before the Reformation of like we got to get people not like in the organizational side, but like in their organization, they really stressed being biblically based.
Another point is that they preach the gospel in their own
And
language.
Say it again.
They preach the gospel in their own
their own
language.
language.
Good.
And they also ministered to the poor. Was their
Good. Okay. You guys, who'd you have? What were your two things?
Oh, sorry. The Franciscan monks, did I say it? Franciscan?
Mm-hmm.
The two things we thought they did well were lives of poverty or like living simply, and then complete. What?
Let her go. Let her go. She'll get there.
Sorry. And then complete devotion to God.
Good. All right, back there, you guys, who'd you have? What'd they do?
We had the Dominicans. Two things they did well is like they lived among the people instead of hiding away in their own quarters. And then they gave up wealth so that they would be poor, so that they could like actually reach people instead of like still, even though they live among people, be like better than them. And
So the people that they were witnessing to didn't listen to rich people. So in order so that the people they were witnessing to actually listened to them, they became poor people. Because that was the people that, the audience that would accept them that way.
And who does that remind you of? Because he said,
To a Jew, I became a Jew. To Gentiles, I became Gentile. Greeks, I became.
okay, you guys, who's reporting?
We also did, two things that they did well, we'll just like, I guess reflect what they said, but there were also, one thing they did was they allowed others to speak the truth without fear, and they were grounded, in their commitment to God, which are two, very good things that they have.
So they didn't say the part about fear again? They-
They allowed, others to speak the truth without fear, they didn't like.
So they were bold?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we're going to start with you guys for the next questions then. Want to give a report there on what would they encourage us to do today? What was your application for our culture? No, we're going to stay there and go backwards now.
I think that they would reflect that same thing to us, that they would be like, there was more than those two things. They also had, they developed a quiet atmosphere for prayer. They had like a balance between, a good work approach and an emphasis on prayer with God, but they wanted to balance that, right? They didn't want to like feel, constantly like become legalistic, but they also wanted to have good work ethic. And so I think they would encourage us to do that, have a good work ethic and balance prayer and God. They do that.
Okay?
And then,
Ladies, anything to add? What did you feel like I want to actually do in my life based on that? Okay?
Was kind of like my takeaway. They had like a high importance on manual labor, working, but also high importance on quiet prayer life separating the two.
Good. Thank you. Next. Remind us again who you're doing.
Dominicans, and they would encourage us today to go to where people are and be who they need us to be in order to reach them.
Good.
Kind of like Paul saying, be all people, all things to all people.
We stole your Paul quote. Sorry. Next. Who and what?
I keep going? Yep. They encourage us to consider money and possessions as less of an idol.
Sorry, remind me who you guys are doing?
Sorry.
Thank you.
And they encourage us to be fully devoted to God, even to death, and to be content.
Okay, so personal though. Make it personal. What does that challenge you to do? I want you to keep pressing into this idea. Let's not just study this information for information. Let's study it for transformation. What does it make you want to actually do?
So we really did mean the one about not having money and possessions as an idol, because in our culture that is so fiercely materialistic, that is an extremely easy thing to do. And this order of monks and kind of nuns, they did that, and they did it to an extreme. And where I would say you don't have to do it to that extreme. We really need to give more to people who have legitimate needs that aren't being met. And I think all of us know somebody, at least one person, who doesn't have a legitimate need met. And we have such an abundance. We should be trying to look for those people in our lives and trying to meet those needs when we can do it. And giving more to the church, more to God, because really we do give the bare minimum and then less than that. That's
Good.
what I mean on a personal level, and all of us too.
Anything else, you guys? Others?
I really like the being contented part in just what God gives you and like what you need and not what you want.
Anybody remember a good verse about contentment? And in contentment you will find great gain. Yeah. I don't remember the reference. Yeah, you can get it. No, you got it. Your group, who's reporting for the second part? You're doing who, and what are your two takeaways?
All right. So back to what we said earlier, it's basically living out the scriptures and spreading and making disciples of all nations.
Is there a personal part of that that you would say, this is a practical thing, or this is a personal thing that kind of came into my life, or I thought about in it?
My thing is, it's just a reiteration of the already, like a personal conviction or belief already of just, the point of making disciples is not to keep somebody, it's to make disciples, to send disciples. And that's the application is continuing that mentality. Well, right now, for me, it's, okay, to make disciples, I have to know how to be a disciple. To get the information, to then share the information. But as in gaining information, properly learning something is teaching.
Good.
That's how you learn.
Great. All right, you guys, who are you doing, and what was your takeaways?
The Cistercians or whatever. Our takeaway was, I mean, we saw that they lived simple lives, and we took that as, like, for us, just daily remembering what Christ did for us, taking time to just be quiet and study His Word without any distractions, or like, just, yeah. And He's your best friend. He treated us like we were His best friends when we didn't, so we should take that into consideration and really ponder and think about what He did for us.
And for me on a personal level,
Sorry, a little louder.
for me on a personal level, it's like they're really focused on being quiet and peaceful, and yet also being like savagely hard workers. And I feel like that's just like really great guidance for a man. Work insanely hard and be quiet and peaceful and spend time with God.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody we didn't cover at all, and I forget exactly when he lived, but have any of you ever read the little book called The Practice of the Presence? Anybody familiar with it? Written by a guy named Brother Lawrence. And he lived in a monastery. Again, don't remember that year. I should have looked it up because I've read the book several times. It's really worth getting. It's just a little book, very convicting, The Practice of the Presence of God. And he worked in the kitchen and feeding all of his brothers in the monastery and doing all the pots and pans. And he said that he came, they called their little room, a cell. It wasn't, we tend to think of that as a jail cell. It's the only time we use a term for that. They didn't consider it a jail cell. They considered it their lone place, their sacred space for themselves. And he said, I have come to understand and to know the presence of God so richly that whether I'm alone in my cell or I'm in the midst of the chaos of a whole kitchen trying to finish up supper and get it ready and move all the pans through and get them done in time to be able to get to evening vester, that I'm as much in the presence here as I am here in the midst of that. What's that? The practice of the presence, Brother Lawrence. I don't know about you, but I can find, especially on a busy day, where I've got a board agenda to craft. I've got a bunch of emails to address. I have 2 counseling sessions that are scheduled that are going to be pretty rough because marriages are, if there were marriage counseling, for example, that are difficult. And I have staff to interact with who are dealing with their things and stuff like that. And I have my sermon to get prepared. And I have all this going on. I find that even though I'm in the pastorate and I'm doing all these things, that I can end up finding myself at the end of the day going like, how much did I actually really think about God? Versus just doing the stuff that I was doing. And obviously in my counseling and my interacting with my staff and with those kind of things that are going on, I brought God into that, but that I was as centered in the person of Christ in the midst of that busyness as I am when I'm alone. That's an art I haven't gotten to yet, let me tell you. And, what's the movie? Because I hear the quote, because one of our staff members used to do it all the time. Squirrel! What was the movie? What? Yeah, so it got to be one of those things, like you just lost your train of thought. Squirrel! And I don't know about you, but yeah, I can have distractions happen pretty easy. All right, we're going to march through some people who we get to see that are pretty cool. Mendicants in the Middle Ages.
I found your verse reference, I think. It's 1 Timothy 6:6, but godliness actually is a mean of great gain when accompanied by contentment.
Good job. 2 Timothy 6:6? 1 Timothy 6:6. Well, that's true. There's not 6 chapters in 2 Timothy. So, all right. So, in the 1000s and 1100s, so the 11th and 12th century, a class of mobile merchants emerged in Europe who traded goods and services for cash. Soon, the clergy became mobile also because they were chasing the people and going where they were. But it was also a means of which saying, how do we disperse? How do we go out among the people? And so the mendicant clergy traveled to all these towns also. So, yeah, we got to see a bit of this going on. There was this working through the people, working in them. Were there failures? Again, as you read over this, there definitely were. It's a mixed review all the time. But there had this heart of moving and going, and we find sometimes that instead of seeing that God worked because of his people, we often see that he worked in spite of his people. And it speaks to the faithfulness of our Lord. And so, yeah, there's still lessons that we can learn from there. Peter Waldo talked about the Waldensians a little bit already, traveling merchants, mostly in France. 12th century, Waldo became committed to his life to Christ, sold his possessions, financed a French translation of the New Testament. Waldo ended up gathering a group of mendicant preachers in the poor folk, they were called, of Lyons. And the Waldensians, as they became known, closely studied the scriptures, rejected both purgatory and the Pope's supreme power, and they were declared heretics by the Roman Catholic Church, mostly because of their community lay people, including women, were allowed to preach. And so that was anathema to the Catholic Church and to many of the churches of the day. So according to the poor folk, we believe the Apostles' Creed. There is no other mediator between God and the Father except Jesus, 1 Timothy 2:5. And they did that in a direct opposition to this influence of the Pope and the bishops and the power struggle. So we've left it in part. It wasn't as direct in terms of having armies raised up and stuff, but we're still seeing this conflict of the power being held onto when in fact we're looking at wrestling with power, and we're wrestling with stuff that is trying to be faithful to the Word of God and what does it teach us, and finding that the powers that be in the church are in opposition to that, and we have to make some decisions. It's maybe not costing us being thrown to the lions anymore, but it ends up still, for some people, being really costly. So the Inquisition and the Crusade both attempted to destroy the Waldensians. So yeah, this is where we end up getting something similar, and it did become somewhat official. They grew from strength to strength, though, during the Middle Ages, in spite of the persecution, and they ended up being players in the Reformation, really setting the groundwork. So as we're looking at this emphasis upon personal spiritual formation, the importance of the Word of God as the absolute rule of Christian faith and practice, and not the church and not the church fathers, that is creating this tension that's building and building and building, moving toward the Reformation, which again is where we will end tomorrow, and you will pick up from there next week. So another one then, a mendicant, Francis of Assisi, who's a soldier and the son of a wealthy cloth merchant. I don't think, did anybody choose Francis as their project? I don't think anybody signed up for him. I was trying to remember who signed up for what. Really interesting guy. So his biographer said that he squandered his time terribly. Indeed, he outshone all of his friends in trivialities. And so in 2002, as an example, he marched off to battle against the city of Pergia, full of a young man's dreams of military glory, but he was taken prisoner during the battle, and a year passed before his father could arrange ransom. That was a common way of getting people back in the day. Now we tend to do prison exchanges, and they were ransomed back out. That was the way different military conquests were financed, is by doing ransoming for valuable people in particular. That was followed by a year's convalescence. So obviously his time was pretty rough when he was held as a prisoner for a year. It took another year to convalesce. And during that year, Francis, now in his early 20s, was slowly transformed. After reading Matthew 10:8-10, Francis removed his lavish clothes in front of a bishop and embraced a life of poverty. Somebody want to read for us who hasn't participated for a while? Matthew 10:8-10.
Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts, nor bag to the journey, or extra shirt or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worth his keep.
What are we seeing as a pretty common thread among all of these movements? What's that?
Simplicity.
Yeah, it's amazing how many moves of God were about putting off and then putting on. So during his illness, he experienced dreams and visions. One day he prayed in a dilapidated church in I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Damiano, at the edge of Assisi. And he heard Christ say 3 times from the crucifix, "Francis, go repair my house, which as you see is falling completely to ruin." Let me tell you a little more about that story.
An hour's drive to the east takes us to the neighboring state of Umbria, famous for the town of Assisi and its beloved Saint Francis.
Thoughts?
I don't think that Francis would have been very happy about them idolizing his little chapel like that. That was quite the opposite of his entire life's work. The church. Like, they took his work and they're like, ooh, let's completely not do what he said and idolize him for it. It's a huge church. Well, the rest kind of fun.
Did they say they made him a pope, or the pope took his name?
The Pope, so that was, a Pope changes his name when he becomes a Pope. And yeah, that was the first one to choose his name. But yeah, he took his name then, and all the popes have chosen names that are I don't really know a lot about that, but yeah, choose it. I don't know enough about the pattern of that, but I know they always do that. But yeah, it's always, I think it communicates some of just their intent in terms of how they're going to posture and things, but I think it's also, it's confusing to me, or that's probably the wrong word. I wonder why we haven't, as a Christian church, kept name changing as a more prevalent and prominent thing. What do we know, for instance, about a guy named Saul? He chose at his conversion to become Paul. I wonder about, and I didn't think about it till much later in my life, but I had a very dramatic conversion. I don't know what it was like for you, but I was not following after Christ whatsoever. I told you early in the week that I attended a Lutheran church. It happened to be a very liberal Lutheran church. Not all are, but the one I attended was. I didn't really have any sense of really following Jesus. I was only there in the church and involved in it, and very involved in it, but it was really a social club. I was there to hang out with friends and chase girls and, do the just social thing in the church. When I graduated high school, got very much away from that. My conversion to Christ was, very dramatic for me. So, yeah, that isn't true for everybody. How do we end up dealing with that? Where do we go with it? Well, for some people, it's, pretty different. And I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? What's that? Yeah, and the name. So anyway, I thought about when I accepted Christ, if I had thought about it at the time, I think it would have been interesting to change my name and take like my middle name. As a remembrance that I'm a whole different person now. And what a testimony that might have been to my family, who in my family of origin, as far as I know, I'm still the only really practicing Christian in my family. Nobody else really has a commitment to Christ. And I've been a Christian for more than 40 years praying for them and never seen anyone come to that. So I don't know for sure why the popes do it. Interesting question, but they tend to, and they do, I know. So Francis founded an order of mendicant monks who would become known as the Franciscans, still around today. By 1209, he had gathered a small band of brothers. 12 men wished to share his life and his ministry. And along then came, in 1214, a nun named Clare who took up the Franciscan lifestyle. And her order became known as the Poor Clares. Francis wrote a rule and set off to Rome to gain the church's approval for his work. And this became the first order of the Franciscans, and Francis was elected the superior of that. He traveled a lot, sharing the gospel. Soon his brothers, called friars, and growing rapidly in numbers, were making trips to France, Spain, Germany, England, Hungary, Turkey, preaching the message of repentance of the gospel, of simplicity, of radical obedience to Christ's teachings. And today, there are 650,000 Franciscans worldwide. Today, 650,000 Franciscans. And I agree, they probably are not real happy with the big cathedral built around the church. They did have, and I think it was in a subsequent video, I only showed the shorter one, but if you wanted to look at that, he also does a walk around more of a CC with some of the Franciscans right there in that place around the church, and shows that there's still a lot of humble cells and places there that are right there in Assisi that are very in contrast to the big Gothic cathedral that's built around that. And the Franciscans are participating in that place where he was doing that little walk up, and you could see they panned out and showed all those little buildings. Those are a whole bunch of little cells, and the one that was originally St. Francis is still there. And they don't have anyone use it because it's a part of the sort of museum thing now. But the Franciscans that are there are still living in those very humble dwellings and stuff. So I don't know what they think of the materialism of the museum kind of a spot. So I think it's both. I think it is an active church also. They have worship service and stuff there, as I understand correctly. I'm not positive about that, but it looked like it was still a practicing church. Weird to have a little church right in the way, though, so I'm not positive about that. So, yeah, a number of those, even still today, are friars and clustered nuns. In other words, they really do separate out and stay removed from each other. So, I want you to interact with me a little bit about this. Somebody who hasn't participated for a while? Reading's a good way to get to do that. Somebody read it for us. John 17, 20 and 21.
My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me.
So we're up to the 13th century right now. How do you feel like we've been doing at this? This is Jesus' prayer, right? Do you know what we kind of entitle this passage? Do you know? In your Bible, it'll have a title. What's that? It's called the High Priestly Prayer. So this is Jesus praying for you. This is Jesus praying for your church. This is Jesus praying for his church over all the centuries. How are we doing at that? It's kind of discouraging, isn't it?
I don't find it discouraging.
No?
I think that truth is very important, and a lot of people stray from it, and if causing division to keep to the truth is important, then that's what has to happen.
So push into that a little more. Help me understand where you're going there.
I think that right now, if we were to follow through with this message and unite with the church that's in the capital Catholic Church, that's like the head of Christianity, we would be living in a life of death. And so it's good that we're not united.
No, are you asking how are we in like throughout history where we're discussing doing at this, or are you asking about today?
Yeah, so really the first 13 centuries, how are we doing? But it doesn't mean we can't talk about it for today, and that was going to be the next step. But yeah, we see it's a mixed review again, don't we? And I think that we see it's a mixed review today. And so yeah, there's a lot that changes in terms of the nature of the conflicts and the things that are going on. We find errors that were happening then, but we find errors and we find lots of odd things in the church today, including in our own country and, yeah, here and what is going on. So let's switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about the monks and the nuns and stuff. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Crusades because we're moving forward into that area. The Knights Templar, I don't think that the Knights Templar were in the book at all. Most of us have heard about them, though. How do we know about the Knights Templar? No?
I've heard of it, I don't remember exactly.
I thought you guys would know this. So the Knights Templar, they were founded 1118. They were called the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. The Temple of Solomon, they were supposed to be guarding it. The mission was to defend Christian pilgrims going to sacred sites throughout the Holy Land from Jaffa, a common disembarking location. And they were supposed to be protecting from bandits and highwaymen. So people were going to be going to the Holy Land. Jaffa was a place where they would get off the ship and begin traveling. And so the Knights Templar were there to protect. The order was established to be like a monastery then, and a lifestyle of commitments and the members, but it was with a military mandate, specifically to be able to protect those who were traveling and trying to be peaceful as they went. The Templars made vows of poverty like the other monks did, and they were supposed to live like monks, but we found that they ended up, because they were also powerful, because they were a military force, they became a powerful multinational organization with businesses as well as military aspects and their operations. They eventually were disbanded by the Pope and ordered by the monarchs of Europe to seize their assets and arrest them. And they began with such a clearly defined goal, with plans to live a set-apart life, but they quickly morphed into an innovative, politically privileged, and very powerfully and wealthy organization. And we tend to know them because of the Knights of the Round Table. That's where it comes from. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the,
Like in Israel, there's a lot of exterior buildings and stuff that were built to protect certain holy sites that are still in Israel today. And did a lot of those date back to this time period or later?
I'm not positive about that. And they actually weren't in the city of Jerusalem, so they were Jaffa, so they were a ways away.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
But it was the route, really, that they were supposed to be. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of the walls and things like that that are around yet today and were from that era and stuff. I know, as we've talked about, when did Jerusalem get taken by the Muslims? Do you recall? What's that?
700 or 650, something around there.
I think your second one was right. I think it was like 638, something like that it fell, remember? And then we said, and since then, it's in the 600s, I know that. Since then, it's been contested all along. It still is today, you know? And so, yeah, it was, they were supposed to be able to help people to do that. So, 1204, Western Crusaders and the Fourth Crusade unexpectedly sacked Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the largest Christian city in the world. So, do you remember the story and what happened there? Why did they end up attacking Constantinople?
Was it because the Pope would not let them pass through, or the people of Constantinople, and so they got stuck there, and in getting stuck there, then they started attacking the people there?
Close. Some of that was right, but they were aiming at going to Jerusalem, trying to free Jerusalem again. Remember, there was, depending on how you number them, 7 to 9 crusades. How many of the crusades actually freed Jerusalem, actually took it? One. Which one? Only the first. That's the only one. So this one, they're going there, and what happened is a lot of the crusades were funded by rich people. So they were supposed to be going there, but crippling debt to Venice and broken financial promises by the Byzantine claimant caused a lack of funds. So basically, I don't know if you know this from military history, but do you know what, for instance, with Napoleon, what happened that he ended up getting defeated? Right, but it was that his army was so far stretched out, his supply chain couldn't keep him supplied. And so that's what happened. Essentially, they went there, but the financing stopped. And so now we're running out of food, and here's this big city. So you're trained and you came on this conquest to fight, and now you're hungry. What are you going to do? Because the dude who's supposed to be feeding you isn't feeding you. So you're going to go and sack the city and take their food. And that essentially is what ended up happening. It wasn't planned. It wasn't the way it was supposed to work. But then we see this response about that. Those who were supposed to be seeking the ends of Jesus Christ, again, questionable things, made their swords drip with Christian blood. Innocent III, Bishop of Rome, said that when he heard the Crusaders had turned into slaughtering, instead of Muslims, the heretics, Muslim heretics, into sacking Constantinople. So the Crusaders owed the Venetians a massive sum for transport and supplies when the new emperor, Alexios IV, Angelos, could not pay the promised exorbitant compensation. The Crusaders turned to force. Crusaders initially installed a new emperor, but when he was murdered in 1204, the Crusaders felt betrayed and besieged the city. Decades of tension between the Latin Western Church and Greek Eastern Church Christians resulted in a deep hatred, which culminated then in the brutal destruction of the city. So the Byzantine Empire never fully recovered from that. Interestingly enough, again, this is some stuff that happened then and ends up still being around in our day today. They never recovered from that devastation, making it easier for the Ottoman Turks to later conquer the region, thus opening the door for a dramatic Muslim advance. And today, more than 90% of Istanbul, Turkey is Muslim, where it was a pretty strong Christian influence. And this conquest, that mistake, made a huge shift in what took place. So who can tell me what a watershed is?
Where you're keeping
What's a watershed?
It's like where the water splits and goes like to the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. So anybody know how far it is from where I live? Bozeman, Montana. So if you take the stuff that comes out of Yellowstone Park and goes right north out of Yellowstone Park, rivers there end up forming the Missouri. And the Missouri ends up going over and going into the Atlantic, but you just go about 50 miles to the west. Everything from there ends up going out to Columbia. So we are living at the watershed of the continental divide. So we've seen some watersheds in history. Can you think of one? In this 13 centuries that we've already covered, what have been some watershed events or moments? Crusades, starting with the first one, would probably be the point, because then they kept replicating that. What else?
When that one bishop put, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like a list of orders. I think it was like an excommunication on the Eastern Church.
Correct. Anybody remember what year? 1054, the Great Schism was a watershed. And really what we're seeing, we just read right just now, that watershed caused this division between the East and the West. And it was a continued, it wasn't an initial, but it certainly was a watershed moment when they said, they sort of laid down the things. We're going to push into another one of those. And this watershed that we're going to go into now is really starting to have us wrapping up our era and setting you up for next week and what you're going to be covering there. So we're moving toward a watershed. Scholasticism, that's where we're going. The scholastics looked to glorify God. So scholasticism rose out of the early 1000s. Anselm of Canterbury is known as the father of scholasticism. And you know, the whole idea that it's called scholasticism tells you that we're going to talk about some really brilliant people, that there are a lot of good thinkers that have made a real difference. So one of those is Thomas Aquinas. His parents tried to keep him from becoming a monk. He became both a monk and a supreme scholar of his era. And he wrote his Summa Theologica and never finished it. What? What's that?
I'm doing a paper on it.
I know, but yeah, we can hear it more than once. We don't retain it. Like, how many people had 1054 in their heads? You get to say it again. It's good. 4,000 pages. He was called the dumb ox.
It's like I was reading through Summa Theologica a little bit. It's like over 6,000. Like this guy, in an apologetic style, like wrote, here's an objection of like the most obscure, tiny, small facet inside of this larger thing, and then responds to it. And then
Okay.
quotes Augustine.
You'll get to give us more tomorrow. So, look at this. From Stanford University today. So, modern view looking at this. Between antiquity and modernity stands Thomas Aquinas, the greatest figure of the 13th century Europe in the two preeminent sciences of the era, philosophy and theology. He epitomizes the scholastic method and the newly founded universities. Like Dante or Michelangelo, Aquinas takes inspiration from antiquity, especially Aristotle, and builds something entirely new. So, viewed from a theological lens, Aquinas has often been seen as the summit of Christian tradition that runs back to Augustine and the early church. Viewed from a philosopher, he is a foundational figure in modern thought. His efforts at a systematic reworking of Aristotelianism reshaped Western philosophy and provoked countless elaborations and disputations among other medieval and modern philosophers. A lot of big words, but notice this. Viewed from a theological lens, Aquinas has often been seen as the summit of the Christian tradition that runs back to Augustine and the early church. Viewed from a philosopher again, he is this huge person and thus a watershed. You get to present on this idea that before him, we kept building toward this point. Post Aquinas, we start moving in a pretty dramatic different direction that ends up fostering and setting really the foundation upon which the whole Protestant Reformation stands yet today. He was the guy that was really setting a lot of that up. He wasn't the champion, the sort of dramatist that got it popularized and known. Martin Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, those were the people who did that. But he set the theological foundation. He set the philosophical foundation for that to be able to happen. So, talk about in your groups for a couple minutes. Remember that we're studying largely still illiterate cultures. How were some of the leaders effective at drawing people into genuine faith? How could leaders have done better? I know we've asked that before, but I'm trying to keep priming you to say, how do we make an impact of the things we're studying? Not just look at them as facts and information. So I'm pushing you at that, and I want you to keep wrestling with, because I think there's more depth that we can go for. What are these things that we're seeing in drawing genuine faith out? How have they done that? How can we do that? Ready? Go. Just going to give you a few minutes. All right, let's pull it in. I'll give you 1 minute if you've got sort of a popcorn application that you hadn't really thought about before. I know we've been talking about this some. Again, I want to keep pushing you on it. That's why I'm doing it over and again to try and say, how do we work on formation? Any thoughts that have felt new in this time of addressing it? Go ahead. Yeah, you were first.
Well, we had talked about, like, visual, like, representations of the Bible, like, specifically the Bible, not just saying it, but, like, I said something, because there was somewhere in the book, I don't remember where, but it said that they put on plays to, and I think that would be a good way, because then it gets, the crowd engaged and into it. And then we talked about hymns and songs, just ones that are actually, like, good. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but hymns that are doctrinally sound.
Yeah, good. I think what I hear you saying, just to kind of reiterate and summarize it, is that we want to look at how can we use the arts, all of them, to be able to really express our posture at developing our spiritual formation. Yeah, music is included in that, art, other forms, plays, drama. All right, let's move. So I'm going to start early on this. We've got something else we're going to do in a minute, but yeah, actually, I think I'll just pause that. So ignore it. Here's what you're going to do. We're going to do a little bit different candy giveaway today. Instead of a VIP award, we're going to do a crossword puzzle award. Okay? So you're going to get to do it by your table. And so I'm going to give you till 1:15, and whoever gets the most done at a table, you have to split the candy bar. Sorry, but I thought I'd do something different. So leave it down till everybody gets a chance to start. You'll want your book. You want to divide and conquer. Candy bar is at stake. Ow! Oh! Nice Charlie horse. No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I hit right in that muscle when I was going. Okay. So you have until, what did I say? 1:15. Ready, set, go. Mendicant? Okay, mendicant number 5. You can fill them in now if you want. Number 6. What is it? Mystic. Number 6. Oh, 7, sorry.
Mystics was 6.
Right, so what's 7?
Damascus.
Damascus. All right, number 8. None? As in, okay, not nuns, but N-U-N-S, right? Nuns. Okay, 9. Like Thomas Aquinas. Okay, number 10. Do you have it? You guys have it? Mayoba. What is it?
The one with Boniface.
Starts with Leo. L.
Leoba. Ah, okay. Yeah. 11. What is it? Engen? Bingen. Oh, yeah, the city, right? Of Bengen. Yeah, good. Number 12. Francis, he got in here twice. Nice. Is that right? Okay, number 13. Clooney. All right. Number 14. Scholastic. 15. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
They're high quality crops.
Ah, okay. 16. What was that? What was the clue? Oh. Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and it actually worked with Scholastic.
Yeah. The third. Okay. 17. Got, okay. And last, right? 18. What is it? Cyril. Depending on, yeah, where you're, if you're from the south or the north, maybe. I don't know. All right, who wants to pick? All right. You got to share now. All right, good job. You can keep that. I know it'll be your most prized possession ever. You can have that crossword puzzle. All right, where are we going? We're going to wrap it up. Let me help land this thing. I need your attention, though. Important stuff. All right, number 1, got to still read a chapter. Got to study page 90. Complete your impact paper. Now, remember, how are we going to do who's going first? Right, so here's what we're going to do. We've been starting over here, so I'll start back here. You're going to draw your number, and you're going to tell it to Kim, who's going to write it down so we remember. So pick one piece of paper, shuffle them up if you want. Tell Kim your number.
Can I tell you out loud?
You can.
Wait, is this a 9 or?
Oh, yeah, we should have put a line underneath it. So what is the number 4?
For the presentation.
Yeah, the order in which you're going to go. So if you're number basically 1 to 9,
I don't have a presentation.
you're not going to do that?
Oh, I'm almost at that. 17 and I first.
This is where I think we should have asked who's going to do what.
So who has, wait a minute, Kim. Who has number 14? Hold on, Kim. So
I like my number. Names on the
pick a number. We're not going to go that high, though. So, well, because some people aren't going to do it. So ask her to change your number, please. What's it? I know, we could switch it, but then it'd leave weird balance potentially. Okay, does everybody have a number?
Grace has 17 if you change
Okay, got it. See, who has it?
I wrote my name on my number just to be helpful.
Well, she's writing it. That's good enough. Okay, so tell me what the plan is with that.
Work on it all day long.
That's your plan, right? Okay, so here's the deal. Before break, 1 through 8, let's see, how many do we have? So 18, 17, 16. Yeah, 1 through 8 will go before break. We're going to go in the 5-minute increments, and we're going to just go right from one to the next. We're not going to do interaction about your paper one right after the other. If we do have some time for interaction, we'll do it with all of them from the first time.
What do you mean paper? I thought the oral presentation was separate from the paper.
What did I said paper, what do you mean?
Like you said, because you're talking about the oral presentation, you said.
Sorry, yeah, your presentation. But we're going to go right from one presentation to the next. We're not going to take time for question and answer after the presentation. We will take time for question and answer if we have it after each segment, section. So before break, if we have some time, we'll go ahead and do some interaction about them and let people ask you questions and that kind of thing. So we will do that. And then we'll do the other numbers after the brief lecture time into the second part of the day so that we're finishing up like now. Questions? Anything that's unclear?
Who's number 3? Is there a number 3?
There isn't. Nobody got 3. So number 4, you'll be functionally number 3.
For number 3.
No, we're going to run with what we have. Good enough.
So when you said 1 through 8 will be presenting, you're saying 7 people in the first section will be presenting, right?
I can hear that.
7 people will be presenting in the first section, right? You said 1 through 8 and 3 is skipped.
Yeah, because 3 is skipped, so it'll be 7. Correct. Yep. Yeah, I'll make sure tomorrow how many we have, and we'll do that. So I would really encourage you to look at the rubrics. Where are the rubrics at? There's examples there. Gave you one on each table, and they're uploaded in a message on ThinkWave, so you can get them digitally if you want. The formatting for the paper was also given to you, not only in a hard copy right here and over there, but it also is in a Word document, so it's already editable. Even if you use like Google Docs or whatever, you can pull that in, copy and paste it, and use it for the formatting. And that makes it easy for you to have a structure and a format to it.
So on your instructions on the example of paper, you said a 12-point font with a 1-inch margin. You did not clarify what kind of font.
Yeah.
And also, I wasn't sure if 1-inch margin means on the side or
Yeah.
line spacing. Do you have preference for line spacing?
I was thinking single-spaced lines as the paper is, just because that saves us paper in case, because we talked about wanting to have them in paper copies. That way you could even make it a front and back if you want. You can make it a 2-page paper if you want. Again, I'm not super picky about your referencing. I know you're getting some things from websites and stuff, so just try to give me that without taking a whole bunch of space. Don't use a bunch of space in the paper, but do try to make it to where if somebody wanted to find it, they could go and find it. They could actually find what you were looking at.
Can we just put the references on the very bottom of the paper?
You can, but I'd prefer if it would be just in line, and if you feel like you want to give more information, then add that also. So like you could say Burdick page 57 or Burdick web or whatever, and then if you feel like you want to give us more information, do that at the end. But you don't have to do a formal bibliographic references and stuff like you do in a bigger term paper kind of an idea. We want to be able to find your source. That's what we're after, but we want it to be practical, not formal. Does that make sense? That's what I'm really after, is that if I wanted to go and do more research on this person or event that you're doing, I want to be able to find that stuff. But I'm not asking that to be formal. I am asking this. If I can't read your sentence structure, I'm not going to try and sort it out. Like if you didn't write this clearly, then, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take hours trying to say what you meant to say. I'm going to read what you said. So that's why I'm saying proofread, proofread, proofread. And then related to your presentation, practice, practice, practice. And that is to be able to stand up and in 5 minutes really give us something that will help pull us into saying, how is Jesus forming us through the course of this week to be able to really come out of this with an impact from our time here?
So for the paper specifically, how, I'm like, almost everything that I've learned from my topic, I don't really know already. So almost all the sentences are not stolen from the articles, but it's all information from the articles, but, you know, in my own words and stuff. So do I put the article or like website name after every sentence, or how do I know which sentence to put it after?
Yeah, that's a good thought. So here's the general thing to differentiate between plagiarism, which is what you're talking about. When do I reference that this person wrote it versus I wrote it? And the general rule of thumb, it's not like it's an absolute thing, but it is a good rule of thumb, and that is this, that if you can sit and write that without looking at the reference, then that is not plagiarism. If you're doing like this, that's plagiarism. And so what you do is, as you're taking a paragraph, for instance, and you're never doing a direct quote from an individual, you're not doing this, you're just doing this, processing what you saw. Then what you would reference is that person in the page where you drew, or the 5 pages that you drew this paragraph from and summarized it in your own words. So that's what you're after. You get the overall flow concept and then you just reference it. And if it's not in quotes, then we realize this paragraph came from these pages or that overall website. Does that make sense?
For the speech, are we allowed to have a timer up with us?
Yeah, and actually what I'm going to do is, this is a really handy thing. Has anybody ever, do you know of or heard of Toastmasters? Toastmasters, it's actually a club. It's an international club of learning to be a speaker. And one of the things Toastmasters does is they have a timer because you give an assignment and then you have to speak in that length of time. And here's what we will be doing. We will have a green I need to get some green, if somebody can help me with it. So we have a green card or piece of paper or whatever, and I'll be sitting back here, and either Kim or I will be holding up green. And your time is going, you're in the green zone. As soon as we get to 4 minutes, it goes yellow. As soon as we get to 5 minutes, it goes red. And so then you know you're supposed to be landing this baby in a hurry. An F. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, if you want to run a timer, that's fine. And if you want to use notes, I'm fine with you using notes. I'm not asking you to memorize this. On the other hand, remember, it's an impact paper. I would much rather see your heart in the presentation than information. And I've pressed for that many times, that I've tried to get you to say, I want you to live this out. I want you to feel like there's a weight of this that God is working in your life. And I'm not saying that's always easy. I know it's not easy. Just try and write a sermon every week and address the information in the text and get it to move into people's hearts so that they would glorify God and enjoy Him forever. I'm telling you, that is a weekly challenge, even after 30-some years of experience. It is a challenge, and that's what I'm pressing you into. Anybody else? Who'd like to close us in prayer and pray for our lunch? Come on. All right.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this beautiful day that you made. I thank you for being able to study. It's more about how your word was preserved and how people boldly stood up for the truth about you, how they showed your love to other people. Please help us to understand what they did, to truly, just thank them for all they did, and thank you for everything you did, Lord. Please help us to be able to apply what they did in our lives, to just be able to treat other people the way they did, Lord. Pray for us as we go away from here, for us to be able to retain the information, be able to use it in our papers, and else to go well, I pray for lunch. Yeah, that it be delicious as always. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you.